Welcome to the Career Coffee Chat podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Urban, certified career strategist and executive coach, removing career roadblocks so you can achieve more impact, influence, and income. I'm very excited today to come to you live to talk about how to combat overwhelm with neuroscience with my special guest, Sapna Aggarwal. So I'm glad to have her on the show to discuss how you can go from being maybe a little muddled, confused, and not sure what to think from 1 minute to the next to being more calm and centered and seeing more success in both your career and your life. Sapna will be sharing with us today some amazing tips of exactly how to get through that sense of confusion and disillusion. Maybe we're not quite sure, again, what to think from 1 minute to the next. You have days, times that you're up and some that you're down, and you're really not sure what to do next because of very confusing time and challenging time, as we like to term VUCA, volatile, uncertain, challenging, and ambiguous. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit more about Sapna. Sapna is an Austin-based ICF, that's International Coaches Federation professional, certified Mindset NeuroCoach for women, and a master business coach. She's a self-leadership coach with additional training in TCM modality and neuroscience. She focuses on women's internal mental game to help create external results. Without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Sapna. Sapna, great to see you.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I'm so excited. I'm a big nerd, as some of you might know, and I've studied neuroscience, from the little bit that I've done. It's fascinating how much impact our mental state has on our well-being, our health, our ability to form relationships, our success in our careers, everything. Don't you think? I mean, what I'd love to know, because we haven't talked about this yet. I'd love to know what incited you to study neuroscience and become a mindset coach to begin with. I'd love to know that story.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for having me, and thank you to your guests for having me here. The thing that led me here was first I thought, I was working with business development, and I'll just use my business development experience, and became a business coach and became certified in that. And what I ended up noticing over and over again, doesn't matter if I was working with a small business or an executive in a larger company, it didn't matter what organization, what field, we were still dealing with certain common patterns. And that just surprised me, because it didn't matter how many certifications this person had, or where they were in their life. We still had the self-sabotage formula, if you will. We still had this tool, this beautiful, beautiful tool, this brain. And I thought, I have got to study this, because everyone has one. We weren't given a manual. At least I wasn't given a manual. So I thought, I understand that it took a transformation of my brain from the past in order to get me here, because there's a lot of past that I left behind. And so if that was the case, then it didn't matter if I was working with a furniture designer, or I was working with a mom who had been home for 20 years and was now trying to sort of come back into the field. It was really about the mindset. So that's what dove me in. And it's just such a novelty. I have so much respect for our brains now.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that story. If I had to say one thing, I would have to say our brains and neuroscience is a universal identifier for all of us. It's that universal complex makeup that makes us who we are. And it honestly doesn't matter what personality you have, what communication style you have, what your work style is. The neuroscience is a fairly, I would have to say, robust tool that you can apply for everybody. And I'm excited today to learn from you how and what types of tools can we apply to get through these challenging times. So Sapna, where would you like to get started? I mean, I don't know about you, but I did a little bit of an independent study. Where are people right now, right? You've heard a lot about, people are so depressed and upset. Yeah. And I almost feel like the majority response was,
I don't really know what to think 1 minute to the next.
Right.
1 minute up, 1 minute I'm down. I don't know.
Yeah. There's understandably so, there is a paralysis, if you will. And the paralysis is showing up in perhaps it's unresolved patterns of thinking and feeling from the past. So there's unresolved trauma that's showing up. There's this stall I have seen with people that aren't necessarily my clients, because that's why they've kind of come in. That's what sort of inspired them to get some help, if you will. There is this possible feeling of just complete overwhelm, which really, I think it's just this blanket. It's so heavy. And so what it's doing is the confusion, the overwhelm, the fear, which is really the instigator of all of this as well. All of these very heavy emotions, if you can imagine, it's like, if you saw life as like this just beautiful garden hose, it's just running, everything is going, and all of a sudden somebody presses on it, it just slows the flow down. So, and it's happened, and not everybody understands it. And yet I think where people who are maybe in the personal development field is like, yeah, it's very obvious. It's an energetic global shift as well.
Right. Yeah. I think one of the reasons, and for those of you tuning in, you never really looked into neuroscience, is very fascinating. A lot of the people out there who are neuroscientists who do this full time, and they have fancy initials after their name, they will say to you, okay, look, be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
When in periods of change, you're challenging your belief structure. So the very foundation, which is your self-identifier, your ego matrix, what makes you you. So that's going on. That's one thing. Yes. Then also your entire environment is shifting. So your relationship to how you interact with what's around you is different. And with any and all of these changes, it demands you to have a high degree of neuroplasticity. Well, what's neuroplasticity? Well, it's the ability to fire and wire new neurons, which is great and is actually helpful for mankind, to be honest with you. And it takes energy. So have you seen a lot of people, how are they responding? And that's that feeling, that heavy blanket you described?
Yeah. I mean, and neuroplasticity is something that was sort of the keystone, learning experience. As soon as I thought, oh, our brains actually are malleable. Why didn't anybody tell me this? Right. But then you sort of reverse engineer. When you think about how many things people have overcome, there has to be neuroplasticity for that to happen. There was a past that was so traumatic, and then the various experiences they were able to, change and edit and understand. The whole process has to be deliberate. It has to be conscious. Otherwise, it's just what you're doing is you're just running a set of patterns. And, as many neuroscientists will tell you, by the time you're age 35, you are just a memorized set of patterns, of responses, of reactions. And so it is going to take conscious energy, deliberate action, and deliberate focus. And this is why many of us just, we chalk it up as like, oh, well, I'm just not cut out for this, or I'm too old for this, or I can't do this, or that's just how my mom was, so that's how I am. No, this is going to require you to take deliberate action. And and there's some habits that they're literally just coded in your DNA. And so it's going to require every day for you to become conscious, set that intention, and then walk towards it one step at a time.
Something you just said just hit a trigger for me lately. So lately I've found myself, when I talk, I think, oh my God, I sound just like my mom. Oh my God, I sound just like my mom. Oh my God, that's what she would say. And how she would say it, oh my God, I'm becoming my mom. So can any of you relate to that? And sometimes it's something you do, or just a mannerism you have, or something, how you respond to something, you're like, oh my gosh, that's what my mom or dad or sibling or whoever, does. And so a lot of this, our mindset, where we are right now, as you just mentioned, is this collection of, we are basically a walking mass of habitual responses. And there's a good reason for that, to be fair. Like you can imagine, if the brain does this, conserve energy, because doing new requires a lot of energy, a lot of glycogen. So the brain burns glycogen, which is the fuel by which it does all this wonderful stuff for us.
Right.
And to conserve that, so what it does is it creates habits, and to make your life a lot easier. Can you imagine if every day you got up was a brand new day and you had no idea how to do anything? No, that's not sustainable. So we have habits, and the problem is these habits build up cognitive drift over time.
Right.
And then they come but we don't fact check them, and then suddenly they become false beliefs or modalities and ways of being that are not serving us. So I don't know if some of you can relate, they're tuning in, but do you have a habit that's not serving you? And what might that be? So I'm really anxious to hear from you, Sapna. What are some ways, one, we can identify when we're in this funk? What does that look like, and how can we work through it and out of it?
Sure. So just to piggyback what you were saying, it would be very challenging for us to start our day fresh, as every day it's like we don't know anything. We're starting to learn how to get up and walk and all of that. So the subconscious mind, it gets a bad rap, but the thing is, it's very important to have. In fact, 95% of your habit loops that you were mentioning, it is all programmed. So think of it, as your computer, for example. You don't want to have to sit here and, if the computer had to learn your actions all over again and reprogram, this would be a very long life and a very frustrating one. It serves a beautiful purpose, right, of having that software already installed. But it would also, what happens sometimes is that we have to do a software update, if you will. Like, for example, on the phone, we do it so naturally. The phone tells us, version 10.4 is available. Okay. And then we just do it because we know that once we put that software up, it starts running quicker. It's more efficient. It's more productive. We know that. Well, if we could look at our beautiful, amazing minds in that way, I think what we'll have is this view of, I'm just in awe of our minds, our brains, our minds are just brains at work, if you want to differentiate that. But really, in terms of step by step, this is why I'm a big fan of having a morning routine, because you don't have to even think about it. You just get up, you could choose to do some deep breathing exercises. It really calms your brain. You're in alpha brain state anyway, as you're waking up from delta to alpha, which is lovely. It's that your imaginative state, if you will, right? You haven't really hit your identity of self yet. You're chilled. It's great time to get a little meditation in, maybe even just 5 minutes. You don't have to do an hour especially if you're starting out, and all of these habits, you get out, you do your bathroom tasks, go and get your cup of coffee. These are just automated habits, right? But if you can think about, having a morning ritual of writing down 3 MITs. So MITs, I just call them most important tasks. Just put them down. It's just a simple thing. What do I need to get done today? If I was called out of town today, what 3 things need to get done today? Simple. Just make your life a little bit simple, especially because the overwhelm that, we often have in our minds is just, there's all these running programs. There's too many windows that are open. if
Oh,
you
that's so funny. Have you? I have this meme, and it says, "My brain has too many tabs open."
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So the practice, the discipline of meditation, of taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I mean, I have about an hour and a half to myself, because I consider my contentment, my inner state, to be that important to the quality of my life. Right. And a lot of things are part of it, a walk in nature, some exercise, deep breathing exercise, some stretching, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of writing down all that's on my mind, just to kind of get it down on paper. That visual exercise really helps. And then just highlight 3 things, and it's not to say that it has to be perfect. It's a practice that you get to curve, and you get to design and see what works well for you. Doing things like that, I think they're the most loving things that you can do for yourself, for your mind, just so it can relax. It can maybe close down some of those windows. It can maybe delegate some tasks.
That's so important. We're not kind enough for ourselves. We're constantly showing up for work. We're showing up for other people. We're showing up for our kids, our spouses. And who are you showing up for you? Maybe not. And so it was kind of, Kathleen says, amen to the need for energy. Thank you for sharing, Kathleen. Appreciate that. Randy said to our comment earlier about, showing up like our parents sometimes. Speaking of showing up, I've been telling my parents, especially when talking to my kids. It happens, ladies and gentlemen. It does. And Kathleen gives Randy a thumbs up for that. And Annie says, I can completely relate. I'd like to share with you a quick story about having to be tabs open. So maybe you can coach me live.
Okay.
Some of the things that I can take next. So you mentioned the MIT, most important task. And I found myself, I was really, ladies and gentlemen, I don't even know how to explain my feeling. It was like someone took my mind and just threw it 1,000 different directions at once. It was everywhere. I couldn't focus. I was cloudy. I didn't know what to do next. And it was because, quite frankly, I'm launching my book in January. It's the end of the year, crazy rush for career growth clients. We're hammering down towards the holidays at a breakneck speed. And, let's see, a week and a half ago, I learned I'll be moving my mom to Texas by the end of the month.
Wow. That is a lot.
I'm really glad this is happening. But can we say overwhelm? I was just like, that paralysis you mentioned. So I said, okay, I got out of bed, and it immediately hit me, just like, coming to that consciousness state, and all this stuff just hammers at you, like all these things. I couldn't focus. I couldn't concentrate. I was like, all right. So I went through my routine, and over breakfast, I sat down. I had, no joke, I had literally, and I have here, right, some of them, I had like 14 of these around the house, just different lists, 14 different lists.
Right.
Why do you need 14 different lists? It's just, that's just
let me do this. Let me get this out from my brain.
Let's condense the list. There's so much redundancy, and condense the list, and then get this out on paper. Okay. So you need to move your mom. What needs to happen? Well, I need to do this. I need to do that. You need to do for your work. Okay. Different list. That way you can compartmentalize. And Sapna, what do you think about that? Compartmentalizing. You have your work thing, and that's important. But then being able to allow your brain to switch to a different task.
I'm a huge fan of writing down in categories, because it will help you also manage your time and manage your focus. If you have, for example, financial deadlines for work or for home taxes, that's going to then self-identify as a high priority. So sometimes you don't even have to do it. Your tasks will self-identify. Go, me, $14,000 if you don't pay me on time. Things like that. So you'll find that you'll work better in a deep focus manner if you categorize it. That to me is simplifying. I'm not a big fan of multitasking. I'm really not, because I think that then again, we've got windows open and we can't give 100% to that task. So could you do, I love Kathleen's comment.
Thank you.
It's kind of like if you were cleaning your house, could you do one room at a time? Because if not, then you have piles of lots of stuff, but then you don't get to celebrate something. And really our mind wants to celebrate as well. It's looking for that check.
Scratch off. Okay, so you mentioned 3 MITs. So 3 most important tasks. Right. And the reason we have 3 is, so I'll share with you the study I did years ago. At least I say I'm a black belt. And of course I had to do a study. That's what I do. So I did a study on how many significant tasks you can actually complete in a day. Mm-hmm. So guess how many it was?
3.
3.
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
That's it. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it was only 2, but for the most part, 3 was as much as you can expect yourself for significant tasks. And sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, those significant tasks, don't laugh, are call somebody. Mm-hmm. It's just something that's significant that you need to get done. It's still a significant task. Yeah. So I will share with you that Monday, after I cleared my brain, I removed 14 different lists. Who needs that? Mm-hmm. I got condensed down to 2 lists.
Nice.
And identified, all right, I don't need to hold on to these things. That's another thing. Allowing my brain to let go of some of the things I was holding on to that was circling my head like a bunch of vultures. Mm-hmm. Letting go of that, saying, okay, well, that's on a piece of paper now. You can let go, brain. Mm-hmm. My brain's like, oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to keep all that in immediate short-term memory, which is very useful. And then things start falling off the plate. Now, and then allowing myself to focus on 3 things. I wrote down my 3 MITs. Mm-hmm. Guess how much I got done that day?
How much?
7.
So you went past that?
I did, because I was able to declutter.
Yes.
Remove the paralysis, give myself a focus, understand, okay, based on my goals,
right?
What serves me, what doesn't serve me, what can I let go of?
Right. Absolutely.
Linda sharing, I'm in paralysis. She says, I'm caregiving my mom. Amen, Linda. I hear you. I'm about to be doing that as well. Mm-hmm. So this is a full-time job. It is. Absolutely. Job search, training, and new skill. Oh my gosh, look at her list. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if she didn't do her MIT, she'd lose her mind. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely, Linda. And I work with women. So I understand that for those women that have children or that have caregiving, they have an older parent, there is so much pulling at them. And not to mention all the other information on the external that we take in, right? So if you can imagine, the brain was not having to do all of this, but we are making certain choices, and we can make different choices. For example, not picking up the phone and going on to news as soon as you get up in the morning, or your social networks. They are not that important. That is everyone else. What is going on internally? Do your check-in. Because what can happen is that it can really derail your progress right from the beginning. You could be taking on other people's agendas, energy,
amen,
statements, and you have enough on your plate. So making yourself a priority, taking really good care of yourself. Please don't be checking emails if at all possible. Please remember, those are other people's agendas. They are other people's things that they need for you. What do you have for you? So what is usually happens, and I'll speak of motherhood specifically, we tend to abandon ourselves and we take on other people's priorities. I understand when it comes to a little child, I have one that is now older. But I do remember the priority task. But even if I took 10 minutes out, just 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it did wonders in how I sort of took myself out into the world. So it's so important for us to connect within, because otherwise we're literally reacting. We are not choosing our response. So you could be doing, 6, 7 things at a time, and in comes your child and they're like, Mom, I need this signed before I go. I'm going to be late, and then you will react because you've got this going, like, say Linda's got, career, thing going, and she's looking up and she's got classes. And then all of a sudden it's overwhelmed. Like the brain, your executive part of your brain just cannot do this any longer. So and what will happen is you'll go right to your subconscious brain. Your limbic part of your brain will just snap, right? And then what do? We tell ourselves, very unloving messages. I can't believe you did this, and then we have guilt around it. And then there goes that vicious cycle down. Vicious cycle. That's not going to help. And, and we want a victor cycle. We want to sort of be more proactive in our approach to ourselves. And yeah, that does mean that we have to make ourselves number one priority. If I cannot fill up that glass, whatever is running over, what runneth over is for you. That is kind of the philosophy especially from my moms and dads out there. Please take really good care of yourself, your mental health, your physical health, your emotional health. You will enjoy life more, even with all the tasks. The 7 tasks will get done because you're starting with recharged battery. Otherwise, you can't expect, like our phones, if we don't plug them in, if we don't recharge them, they're not going to last very long. But we ask of our brains that all the time. Mm-hmm. And, right. We'll rely on caffeine, we'll sleep less, and we will continue to engage in behavior just to accommodate those to-do lists. And usually, when I sit down with a client, I'll be like, is that even necessary? Have you really updated your preference on your to-do list? Mm-hmm. Is that even important? Is that something you can delegate, or is that something you can completely take off?
Right.
So that permission to really put yourself in the priority in that seat. And in fact, one of the most loving things you can do for your children is teach them how to make themselves a priority.
Absolutely. So for those of you tuning in, share with me really quick in the chat, if you don't mind, what are you putting in front of yourself? Because we do all the time. What are you putting in front of your own needs? And do you feel like you can take just 5 minutes? And here's the deal. If we don't, you will burn out. Yeah. And when it comes to burnout, it's a very serious thing. When Sapna referred to the conscious mind and reverting and relying on the limbic brain, that's not something you want to play with, because let's just, for instance, say that you are in a place of overwhelm and you feel helpless. You can create low-level trauma or PTSD in that scenario if it continues. Okay, so we don't want to be there. So it's very important that we embrace the tools at our disposal so we can help our brains deal and help ourselves deal. And I'm willing to bet that any of you have been under extreme stress at any point in your life have had some physical response to that. For me, I break out in hives. I know I'm stressed out because I break out in hives everywhere. It's bad. Right. So for those of you tuning in, share with me in the chat if you feel comfortable. What physical response do you have to stress? Is it a headache? Some people get migraines. Is it some people need to eat their way through stress because that's something that's been programmed at a young age. Some people starve themselves way through stress. Some people, there's different things. There's different ways that happen too. So please do embrace your need to show up for yourself and be your own best friend. even if it's only 5 to 10 minutes a day. It's not that much time. You can do it. So just a few moments to breathe and let your brain calm. So we mentioned, just taking a few minutes. We mentioned the MITs. What else, Sapna? What are some other tactical steps people can take away?
Well, to continue what you were just saying, meditation is absolutely one of, if you think about something life-changing in my life that I can attribute my inner state calm is meditation. It has, and it does not have to be my habit now is more towards the 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes on the weekends I can take an hour. But I have to say, just that act of self-love, I really consider that to be supreme for the whole body. Mm-hmm. And we haven't gotten into it, but you were just alluding to this whole idea of that dis-ease in your body is what creates the disease, if you look at the word. So I am really, from a proactive state, I am creating ease in my body. Mm-hmm. So, I would love for your listeners and to really think about it. What is one thing that creates ease in my body? Is it going out for a walk in beautiful nature? It's just for 10 minutes, walking your dog, just put your phone down, take your dog and just go for a lovely walk.
Put the phone down?
Oh, I know. Well, you really want. But it would be advisable to, disconnect from your digital devices, maybe, an hour before, especially an hour before your sleep, before you're about to go to sleep, because it does affect your mind. Be very aware of what you are watching and what you're consuming, because that's your mental diet that literally is going in, and especially before sleeping. That is information you will be processing while you're sleeping. So if you're watching something, that might be one of your favorite TV shows or what have you, but there's a lot of violence, or there's a lot of imagery that isn't really what you want to experience, please be mindful of that, because you are experiencing it in your brain.
Exactly. And carry that over into your sleep cycle. In fact, I can't. Yeah. My husband hates it. He's like, I can't watch my show. It's like, it's too late. I don't have time to wind down and calm my brain down, because I will not sleep well. I'll have tenseness and soreness in my neck. Or if you ever had a crick in your neck, and did you watch something, kind of tense the night before? And in fact, even a friend of mine shared that she was watching something with her husband, and she was like, I had to hide behind the chair.
Because it truly ignited that. Yeah. So that's your limbic brain trying to tell you something, right? So I tend to be very much, when I'm thinking about tips. So we've got in the morning, we've got our meditation, some sort of mental rehearsal or visualization. I recommend that to all my clients, because if you cannot experience it and see it with your 5 senses in your brain, it's really hard for your body to then engage in it. Can you see yourself with the 3 MITs walking through the day in a very successful manner? Can you see yourself, having all the tasks done for your mom so that your mom can arrive here at the end of this month? When you start seeing yourself, you literally are experiencing it, right? And once you're experiencing it, you're laying down neural pathways. And if you rehearse it over and over and over again, that really does mean that it now embodies. It is inside your body. Once you start, if you think about athletes, they use this day in, day out. Their coaches are training their minds. So if you keep seeing that free throw, and you keep doing it, what happens is it's just muscle memory. It just, you keep doing it. Like swimmers do this all the time. So why not learn from these athletes and these entrepreneurs and these people that have made this part of their daily routine? So sometime either in nature, that will also help. Mental rehearsal, a little bit of meditation. You can even just do 5 minutes of this. Write down your 3 tasks. It just kind of gets you it kind of sets you up for success. So you you are really being your best friend. You are being the most supportive, kind person you can be for yourself. So you can set yourself up, have your cup of tea, write down your tasks, do your meditation, whatever that looks like. And then and then kind of write down, simplify your list. Of course, simplify your list. If there are things that are bothering you, life happens, get it down on paper, journal it out, and please don't edit your thoughts. Get it out because it's in here. You don't want it to stay in here. So you did beautifully when you said, okay, I've got 14 lists. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm so glad. I'd much rather it be on paper than it be in your mind.
Mm-hmm. And there's a good reason for that too. I mean,
absolutely.
Journaling is oftentimes scoffed at by some people. They're like, "Oh, what do you know? What?" Okay, so let's look at it from a neuroscience perspective.
Right.
Journaling allows you, one, to unburden the mind, the conscious mind, and particularly short-term memory. It also allows you to reflect on situations, because oftentimes when we're in an experience, that's not when we learn from it. We only learn in reflection. Right. Experience doesn't equal expertise. Actually, it's when you experience something, it's not the best teacher. It's actually when you reflect on it and you actually learn. It's just like when you, let's say, work out, for example. Any of you who have ever worked out or tried to build muscle or gain some sort of strength, whether running or whatever, you know that your muscle is not built during the exercise. It's actually afterwards during reflection and rest. So that's one reason why journaling is so important. And Sapna mentioned something very important. Write down your raw thoughts. So if you are doing a tool, what I call the emotional diagnostics tool, which is in my book, Elevate Your Career, coming out in January, that emotional diagnostics tool, a part of that is journaling. You write down your raw response, what you thought at the time. Do not judge yourself, and no alteration, because you need to see what's going on so you can then rescript the narrative.
Perfect.
And I would also love to hear from you before we wrap up on our Career Coffee Chat show today. Rescripting narratives. How do you walk people through that? And what are some top tips that you would give? So when somebody writes something down, maybe they're experiencing something, maybe there's an internal belief or an internal story that they're telling themselves is not beneficial and doesn't meet their goals. What do they do?
Yeah, so exactly. I mean, it's the perfect segue. If you are able to see it on paper, what you are finding, or if you're not a person who wants to write down, another alternative is to just pick up your phone and press record and just speak. Because initially, it's just a practice thought. It's the practice pattern of however you're thinking. Once you speak enough into it, then you have sort of your more subconscious thinking that's coming in. Because if you listen to yourself, you will be surprised. Your phone can become a temporary therapist until you go see one. But the thing is, the whole thing of brain dumping, of taking it out, of sort of starting recharging, that's very, very important. And then do not edit. I'm so glad that it's in your book, because that's our shoulding. I should be feeling this way. As a mom, I should want to do this, Right. That's guilt. That's obligation. That's us not denying our own freedom of how we're thinking. And so what we tend to do as children, we didn't have that identification of shoulds, which is like, this is how it is. This is what I want. But as we progress to adulthood, then we were led by obligations. And if we can find a little bit of liberation in all of this, if we can find the acceptance and listen to ourselves, because our inner selves are really wanting to be heard, there is a tremendous amount of insight. So receiving that insight, fantastic. I hope that, like, for example, from all your podcasts, your listeners are receiving the insight, but then combine that with an action. What is the action that I can take today? I don't mind if it's a baby step, and I'm a big fan of tiny habits. It doesn't have to be that you're here one day and you're, now, you've done no push-ups and now you're expecting 25 push-ups. That's too much. What if you could just do one push-up a day? And it sounds ridiculous to people, but really that's just building momentum. That's saying, yep, 1 push-up a day I can do. And if you do 3 MITs and you get 7 done, you would feel really great if those 3 MITs were done. That's it.
Right.
Why are we doing this? Thinking about the feeling and the action and the thought, because that loop is going to help you. It's going to carry momentum. It's like, okay, I did it. Proud of myself, celebrate it. And then what will happen is you'll keep going. So your executive part of your brain, the creative part of your brain, you have access to it. But if you are overwhelmed, you're clenched like a fist.
Right. You can't receive new information.
No, not. And your brain is brilliant. I'm here to tell you that you have those answers, but we cannot think big. We can't think magically. We can't think creatively if we don't kind of unclench this, because we have that inside of us. And that's what drives you.
I mean, we can only hold so much in short-term memory in our task positive network. And if we overload that and don't allow that to let go of that which does not serve us, prioritize, write things down, allow the brain to relax and let go of that information, trying to hold that for us, because it's doing what it thinks we want, right? It's trying to be helpful. Here's all the stuff you want to hold on to. Here it is. And we're like, ugh.
Yeah.
So allowing that to kind of, okay, brain, you can let go of that. And you go, oh, thank goodness, then I can be creative. So Linda has a question. She says, is there a recommendation for ADHD adults that find planning too much of a challenge? So for those people who have trouble, focusing on, one thing or whatever that sounds like, do you have a recommendation for someone who does have ADHD when it comes to, prioritizing and achieving their goals, that sort of thing?
Okay. So I would want to, sit down with the individual to first of all find out what is sort of the obstacle, if you will. So, I mean, I would want to do sort of more of a one-on-one and find out, because sometimes it's language. Sometimes it's a habit, even if it's not an official diagnosis, that has kind of brought them into the overwhelm. But if for example, to answer that question specifically, if planning is a cumbersome, pick 3 things. Just starting the momentum of 3 things that we can, or even just 1 item. And if for example, did she mean like in terms of planning ahead and having a lot of goals is too much?
Right. So you need to have a goal, you need to achieve that goal. And when you have ADHD, you'll start off one thing and then you'll get distracted and then there's something else and something else. And before you know it, the end of the day has come and you've got nothing accomplished because you've just been all over the place.
So I would recommend, this is the proactive in you. So you would say, okay, I know what are really beautiful situation. What's an environment that I can create for myself that keeps me focused? So does that mean putting my phone away in the kitchen while I'm in the office for the hour? Does that mean making sure that it's a clean environment and my tasks of the day are in front of me and my notifications are off? You know yourself best. I know for me, I've got to have that phone put away when I'm doing something important for that's going to require 100% attention. And it doesn't have to be a long, drawn out plan. It just could be, these are the 3 tasks I pick for today, because I'm an adult and I get to choose those tasks. And that's what I'm choosing to do. That action is going to, sort of propel you forward. I feel like we don't recognize the idea of momentum. The momentum is fantastic. If it's just if you're just, all you have to do is put on your shoes and go for a walk and you're only going to do a 2-minute walk, you'll find you'll end up doing a longer thing because now your body is in it. The whole idea of just procrastinating is just because the mental image that you have of that task. The other thing I would want you to do is be very conscious of the language that surrounds the task. How are you selling it to your brain, if you will?
The story, right?
What are you saying to yourself that actually makes that task, much less wanted. It's much less desirable. How could I speak to my brain in a way that, and reframe it? So I know I know it would be easier to watch cat videos on YouTube. Here's the thing. This is the task I'm going to do. And then I'm going to get a reward, and so set yourself up for that. That once I get, I don't have to write the whole book today. All I have to do is write, I'm going to spend 20 minutes writing every day. And that one tiny step, and simplifying that. If you know that you work better in small bursts and you know yourself well, then do 20 minutes. But if you're a person who really enjoys more deep focus work, then set yourself up for that. Different people have different preferences. So it's really about getting to know yourself. If planning overwhelms you, don't plan. Pick 3 things, put it on a Post-it note, simplify your life, make sure that you have a good environment, and then walk from it. I hope that answers Linda's question.
Yeah. So if you have ADHD, another tip you might want to consider is actually leveraging your calendar to block out blocks of time. So if you know you have those MITs, the 3 most important tasks, you need to complete that day and in alignment with your goals. Yes. So that's one thing. If you have ADHD, you can ask yourself, okay, if is what I'm doing in alignment with my goals. So if you start to get off track, and it's almost the same thing if you're just starting to do meditation, or quite frankly, if you've been doing meditation for a while, do it. Those unwanted thoughts going to come in, really, hey, how you doing? Pay attention to me. And you're like, okay, is this serving my goal? No, let it go.
Yeah.
Thing, just let it go, and then refocus. And it takes constant shifting. It's almost like sailing a ship. Nobody sails a straight line. You're constantly shifting back towards where you want to go, and that's most people do that, whether you have ADHD or not. Alan actually shared quite a bit here. To summarize, thank you for sharing, Alan. He says, he's got a lot of things going on, and he does, recheck and do all the things he should do. The challenge is how to manage the uncertainty of life that he's facing. So that feeling that he's very uncertain, especially at the end of the day. So he probably feels at the end of the day, I don't know if this is true, Alan, you can comment if this is true or not. At the end of the day, you may feel like, well, what did I get done today? Did I really make progress towards my goal? How can I manage mentally that I can't really, let's just say, cement in stone that, yes, what I've done has created some sort of return on investment. When you're searching for a job, for example, you're doing the things you should do. A lot of this requires consistency, and then just being kind to yourself and knowing that there's a lot beyond your control.
Yes.
And then how can you let go of that and just revisit perhaps, okay, am I following the plan that I need to follow? Am I checking, am I doing all the things I should do in order to accomplish my goals? Can I be kind to myself? And what other questions?
I cannot, encourage enough compassion, consistency, commitment, and just keep going. Like, really, I can understand that, and it's great that he gets up early and he has a lovely routine that he's put together. You might even just, at the end of the day, just check in with yourself. It's not just a morning routine. How about an evening ritual? Just kind of check in and see, how did it go today? Where did I sort of disconnect from the emotion, the elevated emotion that I like to have, or where did I find myself kind of disconnect from my energy, from where my awareness, where I want to be. And then you just take it. It's a growth mindset, right? It's just like, it's okay. I learned what I needed to learn. And then if it helps to have a weekly accountability partner, someone else who's also working towards their goals, so you can encourage each other together, I think that's also very helpful. I know I'm much better off when I have my accountability partner saying, oh, okay, at the end of the month, you're going to have this done. I'm going to have this done. And you can do weekly check-ins. Half of this is just about setting yourself up for success in that. What is it that what is it that drives you, and what can you do 1% every day to move it forward? If we're going to eat well for 2 weeks, it may not show up, but consistently over 6 months, it has an impact on our body. So it's that, the tortoise way of slow consistency. Things are happening. And even though they may not show up, the carrot is growing. It's underneath. You don't really know. So you just got to consistently, one drop at a time, just go ahead and keep doing it. And, as far as the unknown, Alan, I mean, I have to say, we've always lived in the unknown. We had this illusion that sometimes, if I may say, that we were in control of the situation. These are things that we put down as an expectation. We can put a calendar down, and some situation can happen, and there goes our calendar, right? So it's a matter of just knowing that whatever comes your way, you're able to handle it because you started out your day, connecting with your inner strength, and then we'll see. Otherwise, I plan my day, and some days it goes well, and some days, different fires need to be put out, different things might happen, and that's okay as well. That's just part of life, so having a sense of humor after also helps a little bit.
Yeah, and letting go attachment perhaps to this I will be happy if, putting parameters on our sense of well-being, putting limitations on our sense of well-being. I'll only feel good if something, whatever happens, or I'll feel better, or I can be happy when I get a job. Okay, well, how about allowing yourself to be happy before then, because that's not serving you. And I think if there's one thing to take out of this pandemic that's been very clear to me, me, the control freak right here, the is that I have to be more present. And I have to let go of needing to control, because quite frankly, as you mentioned, control is just an illusion. The only thing we can control is ourselves and our response.
Right.
That's not it.
Right. The situation outside of us, we really can't. And we don't know. We don't know what 2021 brings. We don't know, what job search will bring, but we can just continue to do that. One thing I would recommend is really paying attention to, in your mental rehearsal, for example, how is it that I want to feel, even if I'm not feeling that now? What is that person that is, maybe 6 months ahead or a year ahead, or if it's a large dream, maybe 5 years ahead? How does that person act and think and feel? And then how can I bring that now? How does that executive 5 years ahead is thinking? And so if we stay connected to the emotion, because really we're just doing it for the emotion. We may think it's financial, we may think it's money, but really it's about the emotion. And if we can start little by little bringing that close to us and staying connected to it, then what that does is also gives us this natural drive, this passion. It's like, what is it that I'm doing? Why am I doing it? Right? So, and as Simon Sinek and many, many other speakers have come after and before have said, you have to know the reason why. That will propel you. That will give you ambition. That'll give you drive. And it'll give you a sense, even in the tough days, it'll give you the reason to just kind of, okay, shake it off. It's all right. Because I'm in it for the long game. And I'm going to meet challenges, but I'm going to still have that joy inside of me. I'm going to remember why I'm doing this.
Yeah. Annie has a question here, and then we'll wrap up the show. Thank you for sharing, Annie. She says, I find myself switching between extremities, either overworking or completely giving up, saying, heck with it.
I know that.
The mind never shutting down at any point in the day. So she definitely finds the MITs helpful. So thank you for that. The more elaborate the plan, she says, the more gap between expectations and reality. And I think you're right, Annie. That kind of reflects on what I just said. These elaborate plans are are good. And it's important to have a plan, because otherwise we don't know what steps to take or how to let go, what to let go of and what to focus on. And it's also a great idea not to get too attached to it, to be more agile in the moment, being more present and understanding and seeing opportunities when they arise, because the more present you are, the more mentally agile you can be, and you can make determinations. Okay, this happened. It's a potential opportunity for me. Yes, it changes my long-term plans. Now, can I understand, is this good? Is this something I want to focus on? Is this, so you can adjust in the path of life, because it's not just a straight line. Mm-hmm. We didn't go to college, get a degree, and go into a career, and then boom, 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 boom. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
And for some may not want it to work like that either. It sounds kind of boring. So what can we do to be agile in the moment? And for Annie, she finds herself, like a lot of people, like on the seesaw. We're on the emotional seesaw right now.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up the show, Sapna, just kind of revisiting, almost going back to the beginning, for that emotional seesaw.
Yeah.
What's your recommendation to kind of even that out a little bit?
So, and that makes a lot of sense. And I've seen that happen quite a lot, that sort of that polarizing of, okay, go, 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 and then break. So it's like the accelerator and the brake. And then sometimes we're doing it together, and that's perfect recipe for burnout, as you were mentioning. I would want to find out, what is the gift of the overwhelm here? Why is it here? It's here for me to simplify my life. What is the gift of this adversity that is here? Because if overwhelm wouldn't come in if I had too many things that are necessarily not supposed to be on my plate here. So can I simplify my life? And in the long run, will this really be beneficial, not only to my mental health, but my emotional and physical health? Right. So it forces you to simplify. And I think if anything, 2020 has really helped me reevaluate. Mm-hmm. And so if I reevaluate, if I really think about some of these preferences, not all of them were mine. Some of them belonged to my parents. Some of them belonged to people that I was kind of parenting myself in a way as my parents had done. But it's like, this is not actually what I want. So updating your preferences. And when you do that, some of those people, situations can kind of fall off. So when you are feeling that extremity of hustle, and that, just think about, well, why is this here? I'm not feeling very centered. How can I bring myself to really simplify and go, okay, the reason it may be here is because I haven't achieved clarity. So why don't I sit with myself and see what I can do from, so I can, if I get clear on what is it that I want, that are really things that are important to me, then I can proceed from that manner. So that overwhelm, I mean, there's a number of things why, but please do yourself a favor and, reduce the external media, if you will. If you find yourself watching news and that makes you stressful, don't do it. Like, make a choice to not do this. So you have the power of choice. You are this incredible being that can exercise choice. And sometimes, as simple as that is, we forget that. I can choose to see that person a little less. I can choose to create a day where the starting of my day is that's about myself. If I find myself in this push and pull, I understand that this could possibly even be a habit from my past, and I can choose to become very deliberate and conscious of it. But always choose to be kind and compassionate. There is a lot that is going on that we haven't necessarily experienced, or we've put away, we've ignored, and now it's come back. Mm-hmm. So productivity is great, but at the same time, your quality of life, your quality, your joy, especially at this time of the year, there's use this time, if at all possible, to reevaluate. And what can you simply, if you had to keep asking why you're doing something, keep asking why, and you don't have a profound answer, that may mean that you're doing someone else, you're following someone else's dream. There's someone else's task. So, yeah, I know it's hard because you got to get real with yourself. But would I want you to be working on someone else's dream for the next 20 years? Or would I want you to like, hey, you know what? We're going to have to reevaluate. And in that process, find you back in this equation.
Yeah, that's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that's a lot of very powerful information, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who tuned in to the Career Coffee Chat show today, thank you. I know I took away some great things to work on, and having that clarity of space so you can show up in alignment with your goals and priorities and what you want to do, and whether that's for your job search or your life in general is so important, because without that clarity, as she just mentioned, it's very difficult to show up, to bring the energy. You just can't. It doesn't work. And if you find yourself in misalignment, it does encourage that sense of kind of a seesaw of emotions, or that nagging feeling that you're, whatever you're doing is sucking the life out of you. So get clarity and understand where you're going. It was great speaking with all of you today, seeing all of your smiling faces. Thank you for tuning in. And I'm very excited to have you on the show, Sapna. Thank you so much for being on the show. It was a great pleasure to share, how to combat the overwhelm from a neuroscience perspective. And so we can achieve our goals in 2021 and kind of ditch that which is not serving us and help fuel a better, healthy mind-body relationship. And until next week, ta-ta for now.
Thank you for tuning in on the Career Coffee Chat podcast. It's been a pleasure. Feel free to reach out to me. My email is coacheurban@gmail.com or tweet at coacheurban, Instagram coach.eurban, or reach out to my Facebook group, Elevate Your Career. So I'd love to learn more about you, hear your insights, and what questions you have. You can find out more about me at coacheurban.com. And don't forget, please do reach out on LinkedIn. You can find me at Erin Urban. Until next time, cheers. Here's to caffeinating your career.